Jeff Smith. Question. To prepare for your new interviews, I was watching your original interview with Tim DeWall, and y'all talked about his case being messed up with 37 PC folders and having to pay for more auditing to correct it, and how that is common. As a never-in, exactly what does all that mean? How do they mess up your case to prevent progress up the bridge? Is it part of the scam to get more money? In an earlier Q&A, I remember talking about case supervisors, and I can't remember right off the top of my head which number that was, but I will look it up and put a link to it below so that you can see what I said about how Scientology auditing is directed by a third person. You have an auditor and you have the pre-clear, right? And that's in the auditing room, that's the setup. But there's a third person external to all that called the case supervisor who directs what's done with the case. And it's all personal judgment, okay? So when a person comes into Scientology and is going to want to go up the bridge to total freedom, right? They're going to get all this auditing. And the auditing is directed by the basic program or the basic series of actions that are done are what you see on this grade chart or this bridge to total freedom. And you can look that up. It's all those steps that you take all the way up to the upper OT levels. But it starts with the purification rundown and objective auditing. And then there's a thing called ARC straight wire. And the grades 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then there is new era Dianetics. And once you finish with new era Dianetics, you're supposed to be clear, or most people are. And if you're not, there's an alternate route of steps that you do in order to become clear. And by the time then you achieve the state of clear, and then you're ready to do those OT levels. And all of these steps are not simple little actions. They consist of many, many different kinds of auditing processes or procedures with different questions that are asked in different ways, different series of questions that are asked. And each process has its own end result, or what's called in Scientology an end phenomena. So if you go into an auditing session, let's say on Tuesday, you go into the org and you've paid for 12.5 hours of auditing. Well, it might take 2 or 3 hours to complete one process, which is just one part of a whole series of processes just to finish that one step on the grade chart. Let's say ARC straight wire, which is just a fancy name for a bunch of memory processes, a bunch of things that are done in order to get a person remembering things better and being able to recall with various perceptions, sight, smell, sound, things like that. And ARC straight wire sort of gets you tuned up to be able to do the grades. Grade 0 addresses communication. Grade 1 addresses problems, and so on. So within ARC straight wire or within grade 0, you have 10, 20, 30 processes that might be run. And each one of those processes could take 10 minutes, 15 minutes, or a process could take, depending on the person and their experiences and whatnot, 3 hours to do. Right? You could spend your entire night on one process. You could spend multiple days on one process. So that's how it's sort of broken down, okay? So you can see why it's hours and hours and hours and hours of work, right? These intensives are sold in 12.5-hour blocks, and there's tons and tons of them. So with that being the structure of auditing, anywhere along this line, the auditor or the case supervisor could be making mistakes. They could be directing the person to do something. The case supervisor could be directing the auditor to run a process that, I don't know, through some clerical error was run wrong, or was never run at all, or has already been run, or skip processes, or and there's an infinite number of things that could go wrong here between the auditor messing up reading his e-meter, messing up how he's running the process, messing up how he interacts with the pre-clear, right? Auditors are people too, right? They commit errors all the time. They don't, answer the guy. think the meter said one thing when it says something else, right? And this is, of course, all granting that the e-meter works, which it doesn't. But within the world of Scientology, if a process is run, it's supposed to be run because the meter needle is moving in a particular way. It's reading in response to that process. And they video these things. So the case supervisor might watch the video and go, dude, that process was not reading. It was not responding. Why did you run it? And so now the auditor has committed an error on the case. Well, any of these infinite number of errors, and if you think about how everything I've said so far, you can see how there could be multiple opportunities for error. Any error that's committed on the case will need to be repaired, will need to be fixed, especially when pre-clears get sick, have accidents, get upset, start manifesting that they don't want to continue with their auditing, either by not paying for any more of it or having so many problems in their life that they say they can't. Because Scientology is supposed to be making you better, right? Scientology is supposed to be making you more able, able to make more money, more able to have opportunities to get more auditing. That's the whole concept of auditing. So if that's not happening, the Scientologist, the case supervisor, and the auditor will consider that they've done something wrong with the case and they'll want to fix it. But remember that at its fundamental level, at its most fundamental, it's all about money. So that auditing repair, or what's called a review in Scientology, is never going to be for free, or very, very rarely, sometimes, but very rarely. So most of the time they charge the person for it. And there's a whole litany of things that are done in Scientology, whole procedures that are done to review the auditing folders and list out all the errors on the case and write them all down on these pink pieces of paper. And this is called a folder error summary. And they actually summarize all the errors on the case. And so if you have Auditor Joe, who's been auditing the pre-clear for hundreds of hours or even 50 hours or 10 hours or however much he's been auditing them, a different auditor will sit down with the folder. Hardly ever will it be the same auditor. It could be, but usually it's a different auditor who's more objective, right? And goes through the folder and goes through all the worksheets and goes through everything that's there and writes down all the errors that happened, right? Whether the guy misran the process or whether the meter wasn't reading or whether the guy got sick, or all this stuff is noted. And then the case supervisor looks at the folder error summary and writes out a review program to run on the pre-clear, which he has to pay for, in order to get him fixed up so that he can continue with his auditing on the grade chart, on the normal course, right? So you can consider a review sort of being parked off the side of the main highway and you're getting your tire changed. That's basically what it comes down to, or you're getting your oil changed, or you're getting, the transmission repaired or something, depending on, it could be a very extensive review or it could be a quick patch up, right? Depends on the nature of the errors that were committed and how much review is necessary to fix it. And so this happens all the time, and like all the time, and pre-clears are made to pay for it. And so this not only wastes time and money as far as the pre-clear is concerned, because he's kind of like, fuck, but the organization, right, ostensibly is doing it for the person's good, but considering the fact that auditing in general is really not doing what it says it's doing, and it's not really beneficial to a person in the long run, any more than going out for a walk every day and getting some air. That's beneficial, sure. Lots of things are beneficial to people. So I don't put any stock in auditing. So really, the whole thing is just a big waste. But in Scientology, this is the mainline activity, and so people spend thousands and thousands of dollars just to run up the main highway to get on up to OT, you know, sort of if you can imagine a road going up a mountain and at the top is total freedom, then they'll pay thousands and thousands and tens of thousands of dollars to get to the top of that road. But every time they get parked off to the side, they got to pay for the tow truck guy to come out and give them a repair, right? And that's review auditing. So long answer, pretty simple concept really, but I wanted to explain it thoroughly so you kind of get the whole picture of what that's all about. Because as you said, you're a never in, so I'm not assuming that you know really much of anything about all of this. So that's how it works.